I have 9:01 on my clock. I'd like to call the Planning and Policy Committee of the Ottawa County Commission into meeting. Our first item on the agenda is public comment. Please come to the podium, state your name. And we are limiting our comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Joe Spalding. I live in Holland Township. I just wanted to say a few things about some of the things that have been spoken at the larger board meeting, because there's some misconceptions about the community that I think are prevalent on the minds of some of the members of the board, which are perplexing to some and offensive to others. There is a racial divide in Ottawa County. It exists. If you grew up here, you understand that. That's a very real thing. We have some very specific examples. Like this situation in Jenison where Avante got some serious, like Avante, the student from Wyoming, got some seriously racist taunts from Jenison students with almost no repercussions at all. That is a racial divide. That does not happen in public at your high school unless there is a racial divide in your community. It's very simple. I'm sorry, this is true. A lot of white folks are insulated from the damage and the harm of racism. I know this because I come from a biracial family. My dad is white, my mom is a Latina. I've seen my mom face discrimination, and as a child, think of how perplexing it must be to wonder why your mom is getting mistreated in a way that your father isn't, and have to wonder if it's because she's a woman or because her skin is brown. Think about having to wrap your head around that situation. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say some very frank words, but they were said to me multiple times as a child. I've been called a spick, I've been called a wetback, I've been called a beaner, and I've had adults do absolutely jack about it multiple times growing up. And I don't think I'm special or unique as a Latino in this community. That doesn't happen to kids. Those are not formative memories for people in your community unless there is an existing racial divide. That is real. There's been no effort at all that's comprehensive enough to undo that damage in our community or undo that structural existing racism that exists. And I'm sorry if somebody who is white in Ottawa County, which is 92% white, comes up and says they got fired for being white. They are lying to you. They are lying to you, and you don't have to look me in the eye. I know you said it. So all I have here to say is that there is a racial divide in Ottawa County. It's completely undeniable. And if you claim there's no racial divide, you're speaking volumes about yourself. And I promise the public is perceiving it in a way you don't like.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay. Moving on to our consent agenda. We have 2 items under the consent agenda. We have the approval of the agenda as well as the approval of the meeting minutes from December 6th, 2022. So moved. We have a motion for approval of consent items. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. So that moves us into the action items for this meeting. The first item would be the election of a vice chair to serve this committee, and entertain any motions for nominations for vice chair. Doug, I believe you were first.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I'd like to make a motion to elect Rebecca Curran as Vice Chair of the Planning and Policy Committee.
Okay.
Second that.
Do we have any more nominations? Lucy?
Yes, I propose that Allison Miedema will be for vice chair.
We have a second nomination for Allison Minema for vice chair. Are there any other nominations?
Can I second that?
Yes. Is this where we call roll?
Sure can. Ms. Cosby,
Allison Medema.
Mrs. Ebel,
Allison Medema.
Mr. Zylstra,
Rebecca Curran.
Mr. Bonema,
Rebecca Curran.
Mr. Moss,
Allison Medema.
Mrs. Curran,
Rebecca Kern.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Allison Medema.
Mr. Belknap,
Allison Minema.
Mr. Bergman,
Rebecca Kern.
Mrs. Medema.
Allison Medema.
Six to four, Mrs. Medema.
Congratulations, Allison.
Okay, moving on to action item number 2. This is a Park Services agreement for Port Sheldon Township. There are 2 parks in Port Sheldon Township. And in our information packet, this was a action request submitted by Parks Director Jason Shamblin. I see that it was also recommended by our county administrator and had the opportunity to speak with Michael Sabatini from Port Sheldon Township as well. So if there's anyone that would like to step forward and maybe address this action item.
Mr. Belknap, is a motion first before comment?
Oh, sure. Yeah, would entertain a motion for that motion. All right, motion by Commissioner Bergman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joe Moss.
Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for your time this morning. So my name is Jason Shamblin. It's my privilege to be the Parks and Recreation Director here for Ottawa County. So we operate 45 properties throughout the county, over 7,000 acres. And through those operations, we have relationships with multiple townships working in partnerships. So Port Sheldon Township reached out to us in 2021, inquired about how we operate our lakeshore parks. And they had seen an influx in visitation of their lakeshore parks, had some challenges with rule enforcement. And really, we started the conversation about how we efficiently manage our lakeshore parks. Through that conversation, the opportunity arose for us to manage those parks cooperatively with them. So what you have before you is a management agreement. It has been reviewed and approved by the Parks Commission. Corporation Council had reviewed and helped to draft it. And then the Township Board approved it in the end of December. So it's a 3-year agreement, automatically renews. We meet annually to review the previous year and plan for the upcoming budget. It includes, as it is now, it includes a one-time payment of $12,500 to help us offset any operational costs. And then we'll also have our collect our motor vehicle permits at the parks to also, the intent is to have it be cost neutral for the Parks Commission. And Mr. Sabatino with the township is here also.
Great. Any questions for our Parks Director?
Hey, Jason, how you doing?
Good.
How many townships or municipalities do we have relationships with? I mean, how many parks do we operate in that are not owned? Right.
I don't know that right off the top of my head.
But this is not our first one, right?
No, we manage a trail, Muscatalla Trail. So in the northern part of the county, we also have a joint relationship with Hawthorne Ponds and. Yeah.
Okay.
I just have a question, and it might help me for the future for other just
wrap my brain around the finance part of things. It appears at first glance, there's no expense to the county, because it's kind of a helping, you're both helping each other. I guess my one question is does it affect staff increase? And I'm just thinking more like the health and retirement benefits. Is that taken into consideration if it does increase the need for staff?
So it would be seasonal staff only as
Okay.
it's proposed. So we already operate 6 lakeshore parks from the top of the county to the south. So essentially, we wouldn't change our management staffing. So we have a full-time supervisor who coordinates and then a seasonal supervisor who assists, actually 2 who assist in the lakeshore. It's really, operating the lakeshore parks is a pretty specialized function. So it's economy of scale. We have the staff, we hire quite a few seasonal staff to help manage those. So that's how we're able to do it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cosby?
Yes. Hi. And I'm District 1, so this is my township. Question, and this looks fantastic, actually, and Wind's Nest Park is beautiful. And it's kind of an undiscovered park, but sounds like it's getting more discovered. So plan for collection, you were talking about the motor vehicle collection. Have you established kind of a plan for that and what the costs might be?
So we rolled out last year at North Beach and then Riverside Park beam machines. So we received a grant to acquire those. So we'll be installing those at the remaining lakeshore parks. So instead of having somebody collecting in a booth, we'll have beam machines there, similar to what we've historically had at Rosemount and Olive Shores. So,
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Commissioner Moss, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, just wondering about the seasonal employees, how employment hiring is going, things like that.
So 2022 was better than 2021. We looked at our whole operations last year going into the season. We revised job descriptions, worked with human resources to really aggressively recruit. We had more applicants and interviews than ever. We also had more folks who left us before the season even started. That's kind of nationally as agencies utilizing seasonal staff or having that challenge. We did a comprehensive working in statewide as well as our local kind of part-time seasonal positions. We did an assessment of those pay scales last year and then did a increased pay scale for our seasonal employees. So
How many seasonal employees are there in general? We're talking like 10 or
80.
80. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So that's for our operations. So Jason Berger is our coordinator of operations and maintenance for the department.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Shamblin? I'd like to call up Mr. Sabatino just to hear if there was any comment regarding public input and what you've heard at the township level, because I understand your board approved this.
Sure. Yep, Mike Sabatino. And we have been working with the Parks Department developing this. All of the public comment open in our meetings. We had a few folks who live next to the parks adjacent, just with concerns about trespassing and things like that, how we would handle that. Of course, dealt with what we would do with enforcement and how the Parks Department would help us in that respect. That has been an issue, as Wind's Nest is a very popular park and is well attended. So this is one of the things that we've had some comment, but not a lot of no pushback really. A couple of folks just expressed their concern with the number of people coming. So maybe with the system set up, that might help that.
Okay, great. Any questions for Mr. Sabatino? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So we have motion and support. This is just a all in favor type vote, right? Okay. All in favor for approving and forwarding to the Board of Commissioners the Park Service Agreement between Fort Sheldon Township and Ottawa County Parks and Recreation Commission to accept management responsibilities and revenue generation rights to the Ottawa County Parks and Recreation Committee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
So, Mr. Chairman, I assume that because we've approved this now and we have a quorum, that at our next meeting, this will be on the consent agenda. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So that closes the action items. We will now move into discussion items. In our agenda packet, first item we have is legislative issues. And if I may, I'd like to call upon our Deputy County Administrator, Patrick Waterman, to maybe make some comments and address the memorandum in the packet. So thank you for putting that together.
Yeah, good morning. So one of my roles as your deputy is to keep apprised of any of the state pending legislation that could affect the county or its local units. And then to keep the county administrator and you as a board apprised of that. So this is the first time we're going to be talking about this. Normally, we would have had this discussion in January, but with the changeover and everything, it's happening at this meeting. The county has an ongoing contract with Government Consultant Services, GCSI, out of Lansing. Mr. Bob DeVries is here today. I'm going to invite him up in a minute. But we meet regularly with Mr. DeVries. You're going to see him quarterly at your meetings to give you updates on what's going on. Those meetings right now are already scheduled for your March 14th, your June 13th, and your August 12th meeting. So you'll see Mr. DeVries back. In addition, we will have quarterly lunches with the county administrator, myself, and our planning and policy committee chair, our finance committee chair, and some other folks, as well as our local legislators, to also get input on what's going on. We also hold lunches with Mr. Gibbs and myself. We'll meet with Bob on a quarterly basis just to keep in tune. And then once a year, we do an annual legislative update where we invite all of the state and federal representatives to come into Ottawa County and invite the local units of government to attend that, to ask questions about pending legislation and what's going on. So historically, the county has instructed Mr. DeVries to advocate the county's position on pending legislation that, if passed, would directly or indirectly affect the county or our local units of government. And we would ask that they either take a negative position on anything that could negatively impact the county directly or indirectly, and a positive position on things that could positively impact the county. So, and generally those are limited to things that add, for example, on the negative side, reduce local control, add unfunded mandates, reduce funding levels, reduce public service levels, et cetera. So you kind of get the flavor of where that lane is and what we typically keep our focuses on. Of course, there's going to be other things that pop up, resolutions and proposed bills that you may have a particular interest in and that fall outside of that category that we can also talk about with Mr. DeVries. So every month, you're going to see that report that I attached. These are all the bills that were at the end of last year. So of course, with the new legislature, a lot of these have been shelved or will come back in some other form. They're color coded to give you an idea of what the county's position is. If they're green, it means we're going to support. If they're red, it means we're going to oppose. And if it's purple, it's either a mixed, or if there's a package of bills, we may support one side and not support the other. So that's just to give you an idea of how that will work. As I wrote that memo, nothing had come in, but last week we had 17 House bills begin to trickle in. And I think there were 14 or 15 Senate bills. So I'm not prepared to report on those yet. As I glanced at them, there wasn't anything significantly that looked like it was going to be worth talking about yet, but that could change. 3 of those House bills, I should note, are from our own Representative Brad Slaw. So we'll talk to him about some of those. So I guess at this point, I'd like to invite Mr. DeVries up and introduce him, and he can give you a little bit about his role and his firm.
Thank you. Morning, commissioners. As Patrick said, my name is Bob DeVries. Been a lobbyist at GCSI in Lansing for about 6 years now, and I've been working on the Ottawa County account for maybe 4 of that or so. I love working with you guys because I grew up in Ottawa County. My parents still live in Spring Lake Township. I moved out there when I was 5 or so and lived there all the way through college. I still live in West Michigan. I live in Kentwood now. Still love to live in Ottawa if I could, but it's a little bit long of a commute to Lansing. So Patrick did a great job just kind of outlaying the process that we have. Ultimately, it's up to you what our legislative priorities are. And I'm happy to provide feedback on, viability and the chances of certain things passing or not passing. But whatever you guys decide are your priorities is what I'll be advocating for in Lansing. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. DeBreeze? Doug?
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that. You and I talked real quickly about remote participation. There was a bill last year for remote participation. There may not be one yet. Patrick,
Not yet.
in that set of bills yet?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, for folks who can't make it, but they still like to participate, we did it during COVID, and hopefully we can keep pressing for that.
There were a number of attempts last year to kind of provide exceptions for this group or for that group.
Okay.
And several of them got through. And then the governor basically said that she'd be open to amending Open Meetings Act in some sort of comprehensive way, but not anymore as one-off issues. And so I think MAC, the Michigan Association of Counties, which Ottawa County is a member of, takes a lead on that. And if it is the will of the board, we will certainly help advocate for that.
Okay. And then the second one was juvenile justice. Was there a bill on adding resources to juvenile justice? I know that's a MAC priority. Without a bill, I don't know if we can prioritize that, but do you know if there's?
Not at this time. I mean, the bills that have been introduced so far are mostly by the Democratic leadership. They're the things that the Democrats ran on. I mean, so it's right to work repeal. It's expanding the Civil Rights Act. It's repealing the now unconstitutional abortion law from 1931. That's basically the extent, those and similar issues, the pension tax.
Okay.
That's basically what we've seen so far. They've only had one day of introducing bills. Today, there will be, I'm sure, dozens more bills, and we'll report on them as they come in.
Because we see a pretty large influx of folks coming into our juvenile justice from outside different counties. So, I mean, I think that we're doing well here in Ottawa County, but the fact that we're receiving so many, folks from outside Ottawa County coming into our juvenile justice.
Yeah. The big issue on that last term, if you remember, was the raise the age legislation,
Right.
which kept 17-year-olds out of prison and instead kept them in the juvenile justice halls. We were able to get, I think it was $80 million for full funding to make sure that the counties were reimbursed for that. But that was the main juvenile justice issue last term.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cosby?
Thank you. Question for number 2, if you can help me. Who is the author of that bill?
I don't remember. That was the election package, right? There were several Republicans that had introduced it. The clerk, if I remember correctly, the clerk had asked the county to support the package, and the governor ended up vetoing it. There were some election reform issues that the governor ended up vetoing. But one maybe important thing to note is that our countywide officers, the clerk and the sheriff and the treasurer, they all have an association that they belong to that has their own lobbyist. And from time to time, they would ask us as the county to support one of their priorities. And that was an example of something that the clerk, and I believe the clerks association, supported and asked the board to join them in supporting.
Okay. As I was just looking at the November 2000 general election as being kind of a drop off for a qualified voter file. Just how they would naturally matriculate out. But I think in the past, it's been 2 general election cycles. So it's 22 years as opposed to 8, right?
Yeah.
And then another concern that I had about it, and I don't know if you bring this information forward, is that it looks like they're changing the precinct population from 2,999 to 5,000. And so kind of with those bigger precincts, what does that do to our precinct delegate structure here in Michigan?
I don't remember the details, honestly. I'm happy to look into it more for you. The governor vetoed that one over a year ago. And so it hasn't been on our radar. It was kept on the list just as an example of a thing that the board asked us to work on last year. But I'd be happy to get Patrick the details to answer those questions for you.
Yeah, and if you could recommend to me who I could go to directly to without having to trouble you with it, but I'm curious about.
It's not troubling me with it, Commissioner. It's what I do for Ottawa County. So I'm happy to connect you with the right people.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And Bob's contact information is on the last page of my memo too. There's just
I saw
cell,
that.
so feel free to contact him directly.
I just have a question. Could you just walk us through a little bit more the behavioral health redesign package? Just explain to us kind of what's going on there.
Yeah, so there was two separate competing packages, one out of the House that Representative Mary Whiteford, who's now been term limited out of office, sponsored, and one out of the Senate that Senate Majority Leader Shirkey sponsored. The concerns were brought to us by Ottawa County Community of Mental Health. Lynn Doyle there believed it would make delivering services on behalf of CMH more challenging, particularly it privatized a lot of the services, and CMH believed that would have been a challenge for their ability to deliver service. And so we, along with the Community Mental Health Association, which CMH is a member of, advocated for no votes. The Senate tried to pass it at the very end. We're not able to get sufficient votes, but for details of the policy, I'm sure that you can get them from CMH to some extent, but the basics was it was introducing some privatization into the system.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. DeVries?
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. That concludes our discussion items. We're moving into our second opportunity for public comment. Going once, going twice. Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the first Planning and Policy Committee meeting for 2023.
Motion to adjourn.
Yep. Motion was made by Commissioner Moss, seconded by Commissioner Curran. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.